And the question for Madam Celeste Louw from Tears Foundation, South Africa, South Africa. This is our intervention ask. How can responsible minerals governance better address protection, dignity, and gender-responsive community outcomes, including gender-based, and how, once again, it's not just about a women agenda, it's about a gender through women for driving mineral intelligence to the place of global leadership and African global governance. So welcome, Madam Celeste Louw.
Thank you so much for having me. So it's a real privilege and an honor to be here, and I'm also going to be stealing the MI because I think it's absolutely an amazing acronym. So before we talk about responsible minerals, we need to ask a simple question. Are the communities living around extraction actually safer? Because when we talk about gender inclusion and community-centered accountability, we are not only talking about participation, we are talking about outcomes. In my experience working on the ground for many years and with Tears Foundation, the biggest gap is not policy. It is whether we truly understand what is happening in communities. Because what is designed at policy level and what people actually experience are often very different. And this matters because across Africa, mining is not one context. We see large-scale operations, artisanal and small-scale mining, and emerging critical mineral zones, each with different risks, different power dynamics, and very different lived experiences for women and communities. In industrial mining environments, we often see the impact of labor migration, informal settlements, and inequality between workers and surrounding communities. In artisanal mining, we see survival economies, informality, and much higher exposure to exploitation. And across all of these contexts, women carry disproportionate risk, and too often that risk is not fully integrated into how governance is designed or measured. So when we speak about gender inclusion, we need to move beyond representation, because inclusion is not only about whether women are present. It is about whether they are safe, whether they can access opportunities, and whether they can engage systems without fear. And the same applies to community-centered accountability, because accountability is not only about having systems in place. It is about whether those systems are trusted, accessible, and actually working for the people they are meant to serve. This brings us to a critical question. We talk a lot about risk, but are we sure we are identifying the right risks? Because in many mining communities, what we actually see is very specific women navigating unsafe transport, informal settlements with little lighting, security, or access to services, economic dependency, increasing vulnerability to exploitation, fear of reporting due to stigma, retaliation, or lack of trust. And even when reporting does happen, no clear or safe pathway to support. These realities are not always fully captured in formal governance frameworks. And if they are not, then even well-designed policies will not deliver real outcomes. At Tears Foundation, we have learned that creating real change requires more than awareness. It requires effective continued. To do that, we have built education and systems that are effective because they are grounded in lived-in experience and are supported by solid, on-the-ground research. And what this shows us is something important for this conversation. Real inclusion and real accountability cannot be designed in isolation. They must be built from understanding lived experience, because what communities experience must shape how systems are designed. So if we are serious about advancing gender inclusion and community-centered accountability, there are 3 shifts we need to make. We need to move from assumed risk to understood risk by governance in real context-specific, on-the-ground insight. We need to design survivor-centered systems where reporting is safe, response is effective, and support is accessible and consistent. And we need to measure outcomes not only whether systems exist, but whether they are used, trusted, and actually reducing harm. This is where ARMGI becomes critical because it creates a practical framework to move from commitments to measurable, accountable outcomes by embedding gender and GBV risk into how governance is assessed, by capturing lived experience at community normal reporting, and by aligning mineral development with what the SDGs and Agenda 2063 are calling for, real improvements in people's lives. Because ultimately, gender inclusion without safety is not inclusion. And accountability without lived experience is not accountability. Responsible minerals governance cannot be defined only by what leaves the ground. It must be defined by whether the people who live there are safe, are respected, and are supported. Because if governance does not result in safety, dignity, and trust at community level, not responsible. I thank you.
Oh, wow. This Madam Celeste, I'm like mineral intelligence. Let's put our hands together for really this intervention with all of the global summary of, fighting, ending gender-based violence. From the position of the Tears Foundation, we must commend such an incredibly diverse intervention in just 4 minutes. Biggest gap, not policy. Creating real change requires more than awareness. We need 3 critical shifts happen. Doesn't just assume but understands the risk. Another that designs survivor-centered system, and 3 measurable outcomes that reduce harm through the new definition of what is safe, respected, and supported. Oh, I could go on. There's so much here today that truly drives not just the conversation, but this intersection. I am not the one to do the mid-session reflection. We have none other than our host, Dr. Comfort Asakra Ogaji. I must commend this conversation is incredible. Just yesterday in Nigeria at the banquet hall with Her Excellency the First Lady, they were hosting month and the whole day. And we had the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of Solid Minerals Development, Lady Hajia Shinkafi. And honestly, what you said, I believe we need to now bring and scale to the next level of the impact expression. Dr. Comfort, out of Abuja, a new platform being created for ARMGI. So before moving to the next segment, I'm going to return to you. And the question in this mid-session reflection from our 3 interventions that have come through our brilliant speakers, Prof. and Mr. Islam, as well as Madam Celeste, is many frameworks exist in ESG, and responsible mineral spaces. What distinguishes